urgent tone. In little more than 24 hours, 60,000 people plunged into the ocean off North Africa to bypass a physical border wall. To put that scale into perspective, that number is equal to 70% of the destination city's entire population, all arriving overnight. To get there, migrants swam for miles to skirt around a coastal breakwater. In the chaos of the crossing, 67 people died from drowning and stampedes. This map highlights their destination, Ceuta, a tiny Spanish enclave on the African coast. It and Melilla form the EU's only land border with Africa. Because of this, the border features multiple security fences, constant surveillance, and choke points built to repel mass crossings. How do 60,000 people bypass a fortress like this in a single day? In a region defined by high-tech barriers and military patrols, a breach of this scale suggests a failure far deeper than a broken fence. The official explanation for the surge centered on a digital trap. A viral rumor began spreading online that all border enforcement around Ceuta had been suddenly suspended. The seed of that rumor came from a real legal decision. The Spanish Supreme Court ruled that migrants arriving by sea could not be summarily deported without due process. Human smuggling networks immediately twisted that nuanced ruling. They conflated it with a recent Spanish amnesty program meant for existing undocumented workers, packaging the two completely different policies into a false promise of an open border. The target audience for this misinformation was desperate Moroccan youth facing deep economic hardship, who took the bait in hopes of finding work in Europe. But this explanation falls apart at the borderline. Moroccan security forces possess the capability and the history of using water cannons and force to stop illicit crossings. A viral rumor explains why tens of thousands of people tried to cross. It does not explain why the border guards let them succeed. To understand the collapse, we have to look away from the smugglers and focus on what the Moroccan state was doing on the day of the crisis. This chart shows average monthly border apprehensions in Ceuta. There are exactly two massive sudden spikes in recent history: the event we just saw in July 2026 and an identical anomaly in May 2021, when 10,000 migrants crossed completely unhindered. During that 2021 event, Morocco deliberately loosened its border controls to punish Madrid. Spain had provided medical treatment to a leader of the Western Sahara independence movement, a territory Morocco claims as its own. The trigger for the July 2026 crisis followed a nearly identical pattern. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez had just conducted a high-profile diplomatic visit to Algeria, which happens to be Morocco's fiercest regional rival. Analysts point directly to that Algerian visit as the catalyst. Moroccan authorities are widely suspected of ordering their border guards to stand down in retaliation. The viral rumor explains why people gathered, but the history explains why they were allowed to cross. These thousands of arrivals were effectively converted into diplomatic leverage for a high-stakes regional dispute. For the people who made it across, the promise of an open border turned out to be a trap. Thousands found themselves sleeping in the forests and sidewalks of Ceuta, fighting over food and facing alleged police violence. The conditions in the enclave were so dire that within days, nearly 48,000 of the migrants walked right back into Morocco voluntarily. The pressure building in Ceuta quickly spilled over into the halls of power in Brussels. EU leaders scrambled to respond to what they saw as a direct threat to the bloc's migration policy. Pacing quickens. The European Union's defining principle of unity fractured overnight. Looking at the Schengen free movement zone, you can see how quickly Italy and France reacted by suspending their open border agreements with Spain, reimposing strict air and sea controls. Spain's physical reaction was just as drastic. They announced the construction of a new 500-meter containment fence extending straight off the beach and into the deep ocean to block future swimmers. As long as Europe relies on fragile transactional diplomacy to outsource its border enforcement, human lives will continue to be used as political ammunition. Physical walls, no matter how far they extend into the sea, cannot solve geopolitical vulnerabilities.